This episode of Dispatches from Planet Albany is brought to you with support by New York State United Teachers, which represents more than 600,000 educators and school-related professionals in New York. Dispatches is also supported by the public affairs firm O'Donnell & Associates. For more information, check out o'donnellsolutions.com. We actually booked something with Netflix, and it goes The Ringer, Barstool Sports, and New York State Politics. They saw this as a growth area.
On Sunday, after the Pats game, it'll go Ringer for 2 hours, and then at midnight, Albany Politics will come on.
I've also declared war on potholes, so here's the first shot across the bow.
Well, as you know, with Planet Albany, there's always something that makes the planet turn.
And it's this amazing view of D.C., and Eddie Vedder comes out. And he goes, "You have a cigarette?" And I've never smoked in my life, but if I had, I wish that was the moment.
And this strategy takes us from potholes to knotholes.
I would like to say it was a pleasure, Mr. Kim. But I'm on the road.
I'm David Lombardo, and this is Dispatches from Planet Albany, a podcast about power and policy in New York State government. And on this episode, we're handicapping the odds for the lieutenant governor candidates that Nassau County Executive Bruce Blakeman might be choosing from. And to help us assess the percent chances down to the nearest degree, we are checking in with Chapin Fay, the founder and chief bottle washer for Lighthouse Public Affairs. Well, before we have you analyze the odds that the crack team of coders and political analysts here at Dispatches from Planet Albany cooked up for the potential Republican LG candidates, I'm curious, and this comes with the caveat that LG candidates probably don't sway voters that much. I'm curious whether you think the LG choice is a way for Nassau County Executive Bruce Blakeman to shore up his conservative bona fides in advance of a general election, essentially making sure that all the voters on the right who might have some sort of reservations about him come home and aren't maybe sitting out this election. This gives him, say, a reason to be excited about his ticket.
I think you always have to make that calculation when you're considering your lieutenant governor, though I don't know that Bruce needs to do that in the current environment he's operating in, which is we're having a convention coming up. And then presumably there shouldn't be any real primary challenges for him.
But there's mutterings. There's mutterings of discontent.
There's mutterings of discontent, and we can get into that when we start talking about, individual candidates. Geography is one of the criteria. I think that's going to be important for Bruce, considering a lot of the rest of his ticket mates or presumptive ticket mates are going to be from downstate. I do think geography is going to matter. Like you said, there are mutterings, though he is, he's a Trump-supporting conservative, and that's how he governs. He's just been able to do that without, accumulating some of the baggage of others. But just sort of answer your question about sort of the general principles. I mean, first, right, you want someone who's not going to do any harm, right? Do no harm to the ticket. So you need to thoroughly vet everyone and make sure that there's no baggage that you're going to constantly be talking about that you didn't know about. And then there's always politics of personality, I call it, right? You want someone who aligns with, your positions. You can't have a candidate out there disagreeing with you constantly, and someone that you can work with, on a daily basis. The other thing that matters is constituencies. Some of the elected officials that we'll talk about have a constituency, people that have voted for them before. Administrator Zeldin last cycle picked someone whose name wasn't widely known, but, phenomenal LG, and it takes money, time, all your resources to sort of bring LG up to the name recognition you want, but you're also doing that for your own candidacy. So it's difficult. And then last, I would say in the main, you can pick someone issues wise, right? If you think crime, I think affordability is going to be a big one. If there's someone who brings some sort of heft to the ticket based on that issue alone, that could be something. And the grumblings about, that you alerted to are coming from upstate. So I do think it's going to be important for him to pick someone, that will help there. And then one thing we didn't mention, politically important, right? Western New York is very politically important. Westchester County, very politically important, and Republicans have struggled there. So maybe if there's a person with a constituency there, that might make a difference. People are saying the Hudson Valley is the swing area. If someone has been elected there or has some sort of constituency or is from the Hudson Valley, I think that could be important too.
Are you saying Mike Lawler should be the choice?
Mike Lawler would make a phenomenal lieutenant governor candidate. I don't know that he would want to do that for various reasons, but he would make a good candidate.
Well, why don't we get into some names? And you mentioned that geographic difference. So I'm going to give you a name who is from the Capital Region. This is State Senator Jake Ashby. He is a Republican, represents a moderate area. Democrats come after him every time since redistricting now with the hopes of turning that purple seat blue. He is, based on my discussion with particularly the Democratic women in the legislature, one of their favorite Republicans, I think in part because he is easy on the eyes and has a very soothing voice. And I think while he votes pretty reliably with his conference, he is perceived to be more moderate, which I think speaks to the needs of a Republican who's going to run in deep blue New York. So Jake Ashby, I'm putting him at 1% though, because despite being someone with a military background, despite everything I just mentioned, I also don't think he's that interested in this. And if you're going to do this as a state lawmaker, you're giving up a seat. Would you go higher than 1%, or would you go lower, which would be 0%?
I don't think it's 0%. I thought 1% was a little low.
Okay. So
probably single digits though. But there's a lot to like. Though I would caution, don't fall for it's the Democrats, any Democrat's favorite Republican, because as soon as you put your name on a ballot to something important like statewide, the Democrats will turn on you in a second. So no matter how good looking or how well liked he is, he will become the devil as soon as he is on a on a higher ballot. But I do like what you're saying about him. I do think a big factor should be a constituency, someone who people have voted for in the past. It's impossible and almost not worth it to spend time, money, and resources to elevate someone's name ID as your lieutenant governor pick when you're also trying to do that, with yourself around the state.
Yeah, he is not well known.
So, many lieutenant governor candidates on the list are probably not going to have huge statewide name recognition anyway. Then we'd be talking about them running for governor probably, right?
So you mentioned the Hudson Valley being an important area. So I'm going to go with someone who is from the Hudson Valley and at one point was every Democrat's favorite Republican, in part because how he presents himself, not necessarily based on his actual record. And that is Mark Molinaro. He's been elected to Congress in a purple seat. Some interest apparently in moving up north of me and serving in Congress. I don't know how realistic that actually is, though. So what about him as the lieutenant governor? He presents well as sort of that purple across the aisle candidate, but maybe that's not possible once you've run statewide and been sort of attacked by Democrats and you've embraced the Trump administration by taking a job in it.
Yeah, I mean, his last campaign, I think he's got some Trump issues, right? County Executive Blakeman doesn't seem to have them, even though he is a Trump ally. So that would be the model to look at. Though there are a lot of things to like about Marcus's.
Oh yeah, I didn't give you a percentage. I'm giving him 5% chance. Would you go above or below him being the LG at 5%?
5% chance. Well, I'm just curious who's coming next. Who's going to have like the above 50% chance here?
We'll have to see.
I think he's a little higher than 5, but maybe double digits, but just there. What I like about him in particular, he was the Dutchess County executive. Republicans just had a bad year in Dutchess. You don't win statewide without winning Dutchess County.
It seems like a bellwether.
Yeah, and the legislature just flipped, right, for the first time in a long time. And he has constituency built in there. And again, he's run statewide. His name ID would probably be higher than most of the other people on this list just because he's run in the past before statewide. I don't know if he can go for running for governor and being the top Republican and for that cycle in New York and then playing second fiddle to someone else. But maybe.
He does seem intent, though, on having his name being part of political conversations in New York. Whether he's serious about some of these races or not, I don't know.
Yes, the very high stakes LG sweepstakes here.
What happens, too, though, if you put your name out for that and then you don't get it? I mean, does that make you think, like, even worse about them and their, like, political future?
I mean, that's just something you have to deal with internally, I
I
guess. I
guess.
mean, if you put your name, I mean, that's you're going to have to lick your own wounds. The rest of us might not even know you're putting your own name out there. But listen, he deserves to be on a list. He's
Mhm.
carried the mantle. I personally think we should be forward looking. I don't really have anything bad to say about Mark Molinaro. I just think we need to be forward looking. But he is from the right area and does have, some things going for him for sure. And that's why I think 5% was not generous enough. But I do I wouldn't put him as a super top contender. But people like him. That's why he's being suggested to be running in other places. People other than him have been saying his name. So he's certainly someone to consider.
So coming in at 10%, this would be the Assembly Minority Floor Leader, a Capital Region Republican, an attorney, Mary Beth Walsh. And she makes sense to me on a couple levels. One being there's always the gender gap in the Republican politics. And if you want to appeal to women voters, the simplest way, short of changing your policy platforms, is to have a woman on the ticket. And I think she checks that box. I think because she has experience debating issues on the floor constantly, I have to imagine she would be good sparring with the media potentially in a debate setting, although I don't know how many eyeballs are going to be drawn to the future LG debates in New York. Might not necessarily be must-see TV. And I could see her as someone who's willing to take a big swing at this. At the same time, she'd have to give up her seat. Also, she doesn't come with a lot of name recognition outside of Albany politics. So that's why I've got her at 10%.
I think that's about right. I like her for the same reasons that you mentioned. She's a very well-liked elected official. I also think she does carry some respect from across the aisle. We haven't really spoken about this yet, but there aren't a lot of women candidates so far who've thrown their hat in the ring for Republican statewide offices this cycle. I think she's right to be above the other two.
Above 10%, though, or would you go below 10%?
I think she's about right. I think
Nailed
that's
it?
about right.
The,
I think that's about right.
The crew got it right. I should tell
Yeah, I
them.
think that's about right.
Nice job.
Yeah.
Take the weekend
Yeah.
off. Okay.
Yeah. So just if we're going in percentage order, I think that's right too, right? Of the two you mentioned and her being sort of in pole position here of the folks we've spoken about. And again, the other thing is you mentioned, Molinaro has run before. So the narrative on him, whatever that may be, may already be baked. Introducing a new person, while it does take resources, also is opportunity.
She's going to bring a whole voting record, though. That's one of the challenges. You coming from the legislature, they vote on a lot of bills in committee and on the floor. And in blue New York, there's going to be some awkward conversations.
Yes, it is tough for Republicans in the legislature running for higher office or different office, just because there is you have to vote on the crazy stuff the Democrats in power are doing, and it's New York, so a lot of your votes aren't going to be aligned with your conservative values. Probably
You have to vote on the budget. It's an omnibus budget. Yeah. So many things tucked in there.
Yep. So there are a lot of problems coming out of the state legislature. That's a good point that we didn't bring up about the senator either.
Well, that's why I had him at 1%. I didn't want to spend too much time on it. Some challenges need someone who simply won't quit. Modern Advocacy brings tenacity, strategy, and unwavering follow-through to every client it serves. Learn more at modernadvocacyllc.com. So let's talk about somebody who does not have a voting record. And this is a name that was completely foreign to me until I began looking into this, and maybe they shouldn't have been. And this is Bobby Ann Cox. She is a self-described civil rights attorney who was someone who rose to prominence, I think, in a lot of conservative circles in the wake of the pandemic when she brought a variety of lawsuits against New York, looking to take down the Department of Health and some of their quarantine procedures. And I think that makes her kind of a rock star in certain corners of the conservative party. And I think that speaks to some degree about that issue I brought up at the start, not necessarily about having more conservative bona fides, but exciting the conservative base. There's an online, say, constituency that she appeals to. And I think being a lawyer, there's the potential to be a good talker, to be a good surrogate for the campaign. Again, she comes from New York City, so no geographical benefit. Outside of those circles that I mentioned, I don't think she's really well known. But I think there is something appealing to someone who has been on television, who's been in front of a camera, and can then theoretically take that message to a larger crowd. So Bobby Ann Cox, who I've also seen as Bobby Ann Flower Cox, we're going to give her 25%.
Interesting. Above all the others, that's interesting. I thought actually she was a Westchester person, or her practice was in Westchester or something. So that would inure to her benefit,
Yes,
too.
because New York City and Westchester so far apart.
Well, Westchester is important, right?
Sure.
Republicans, Governor Pataki used to win Westchester. That's where he was from, and we have not. And it's tough to win statewide without Westchester, right? It's just difficult. So I think someone from Westchester would be important. But yes, you're right. As someone who grew up on Long Island, I would say, I mean, anything above 125th Street is upstate, so it's all the same. But no, that's exactly right. I think she'd make a great attack dog, great surrogate. She maybe even led the fight against Prop 1. I guess that was last cycle. So you're right. She does have a very strong following, and the conservative movement folks really like her. I don't know that Blakeman needs to shore up his conservative side.
Mm-hmm.
He may be thinking that, right? Because there are some people complaining upstate, and you do have to start with your base. You can't do anything without keeping your base fired up and coming out, which is Republicans. But in order for Bruce Blakeman to be governor, he has to figure out how to attract non-Republican votes. So that's something I would be thinking about in all of my decisions, including who the LG candidate was. But no question, she's a superstar, talented attorney, conservative movement person who's fighting for these, not just talking about it on Twitter, but actually fighting for it as attorney, and well respected. So there is a lot to like.
Leaning into the social issues, though, that she has, to me, I think there is a case to be made that is something that could appeal to those suburban voters in those areas north and south of New York City that need to be part of any Republican coalition. I think there are people who view things like the transgender right issues and the way that Democrats have approached them as going too far, and that they're like, who's speaking up for me on XYZ issue? And I know Bruce Blakeman has been out there when it comes to, say, like women's sports, but I think she potentially lends more credence to those conversations as a woman than he does as an old dude.
There's no question about that. I just worry about talking about abortion every day on the campaign. Blakeman he's pro-choice. He could just say, I'm pro-choice, let's move on. And so we need to get off the conversation. Blakeman has the ability to do that because of his positions. If he has someone who is known as very pro-life because he's worried about his own base, as his LG, I mean, as you just brought it up, right? The Democrats are going to talk about that every single day. So it's something. I have the luxury of not being a party person. I'm a consultant who just cares about winning, right? So things are easier for me to say to you than actually do when you're running inside a party structure. But this is an issue that he aligns with the overwhelming majority of New Yorkers. And I think he needs to keep it that way in order to win this race and not talk about it. Pro-life, you shouldn't really lead with this as when you're a Republican. And also pro-choice, right? We don't need to be alienating. He doesn't need to be alienating his entire base every single day either, because you need them. Everything else about, this is in the context of Bobby Ann. Everything else I like about that idea, but if it's going to focus on abortion, I would be worried about that. But the campaign may feel that they need that.
Yeah, it needs to be that sort of wink and a nod or something like that. But moving on to the last candidate that I have on my list, and this is the Erie County Sheriff John Garcia, who I'm putting at 35%. I think some of the things that are in his favor are the fact that he's got the law enforcement background. It's something that Republicans traditionally gravitate toward. That was the case in 2014 with Rob Astorino's pick. I think the fact that he didn't have an opponent in Erie County the last time around, and that's a county where if Republicans are going to pull off an upset, they need to, you probably know the math better than me, but if not win it outright, they need to do, 49.9999999%. And I also think that the fact that he's a man might actually increase the likelihood of him being chosen because, in part, it's the relationship between the principal and their number two, and maybe Bruce Blakeman just gets along better with another old dude, if I can generalize. So above or below 35% for John Garcia? Also, I should point out, he brings no voting record to this, so he's a clean slate on a lot of things.
But he's elected official, so he brings people who have voted for him with no voting record. I think you got the percentage about right. Of all the people we've discussed, he certainly, I think, should be far and away the leader. And don't forget, Lee Zeldin also in 2022 picked one of New York's finest. Actually, picked I think she was a former or just about to be former NYPD officer.
Yep. Rising to the rank of Deputy Inspector and Commanding Officer of the 70th Police Precinct. I had that fired up because I couldn't remember if it was Allison D'Esposito or just Allison Esposito, and it's the latter.
Yes, and I was blanking. I was pausing because I was trying to find the word of like what an officer of a police officer is called, right? So because she was leadership, right? She wasn't just a rank and file. She was senior leadership.
Brass.
In any case, brass. There you go. In any case,
the command structure. The boys downtown.
Yes, you could talk in your old timey. You pick a cop in uniform. They look old timey. You talk in your old timey radio voice.
Although I ran out of other ways to describe leadership.
I think she was a great pick, and she was a phenomenal candidate, and really was an asset to Lee on the campaign trail.
She might have been an asset, but great and phenomenal are maybe a little too effusive, Chapin.
Well, if you had been in rooms with her and seen her give speeches and connect with people and talk about her personal story, she was a phenomenal candidate. When you run for LG, you can kind of get lost in the mix. Like I said, like the campaign problem here is you can't really spend a lot of resources trying to burnish the LG's name ID, right? Are you going to spend money doing that and time? It's really an extension of the candidate and, someone who can go to events and be your number one surrogate. But back to Garcia.
Yep.
He's Hispanic. He's from Western New York. You laid out the case. Western New York is critically important. It's where Hochul is from. I don't know that 6 points were there, but I think if Lee had done better in the city and in Western New York, there's his 6 points. So I think that's important. I do think there are other issues that are going to dominate this campaign besides crime. I think that was the issue of the last battle or last war, but it's always an issue, particularly in a state that has huge cities like Buffalo and New York City, right? If we're talking about security issues or policing issues as a campaign issue, that inures to Republicans' benefit, right? If we're talking about, school funding, that inures to Democrats' benefit. Sure. I think you got your handicapping right. The one thing I would say is about old guys getting along. I mean, I think he would be okay with a woman or a man on the ticket.
But they can talk about like their favorite Yankees from the 1960s. They could be like, how about Tony Kubek, man? Yes. Bobby Richardson, what a second baseman.
It's true. Like I said, I led off with, the first category is politics and personality. So you do have to get along, though I would hope that they're talking about more than just old Yankees players when they're running around this state, which someone like Mark Molinaro knows firsthand how big this state is. Because when you go from county executive trying to be governor, every single candidate I've ever worked for acknowledged some sort of comment about how big this, expletive state is when they're trying to map out their schedule and get from Long Island to Buffalo in one day, which is what a lieutenant governor can help with, right?
So is there anyone we didn't mention that would be on your top of like a recruitment list that you would say, here is the county executive upstate, or here is the prosecutor or business person that I think if we could convince them to run and join our ticket, that would be a real bump?
I mean, there's plenty of talented people that we didn't talk about that, Nicole Maliotakis has been talked about running statewide before, and they're trying to take her congressional seat away from her, so maybe now's the time. There are certainly county executives upstate, like you mentioned, who should be on the list.
Steve McLaughlin?
Well, he has some of his own baggage, but certainly he has a following. And if you want an attack dog,
a social media attack dog.
Yeah. I mean, he's good. Certainly has a lot of strong support from the conservatives. Like we had that conversation earlier.
Lock up the top 1,300 vote in the capital region.
Yeah, that's right. Listen, one vote at a time, man. We are Republicans. We'll take votes wherever we can get them. David.
Well, can I interest you in a profile and you tell me what you think of this person? Woman,
Yeah.
national profile, has represented a large swath of upstate New York. Elise Stefanik for lieutenant governor. What do you think?
You didn't have to give me the name. I knew where you were going immediately. The biggest name we haven't discussed. I don't know that she would want the number 2 spot.
Not
but again,
running for any other office?
She would be great. She would be great on paper. Again, the two of them would have to get along, right? And
is there reason to think they don't?
No, but she sort of got out very quickly. We both commented on, sort of what she said in her
being a little sarcastic.
her goodbye statement. This is all conjecture. I don't feel like she feels like she owes anybody a favor or the party a favor, which is almost what running lieutenant governor would be at her level.
It's
right?
a thankless job for anybody.
Yeah, but she certainly, she knows how big the state is. She has been reelected multiple times. She is an incredible fundraising juggernaut. Mm-hmm. So again, on paper, there are incredible things about her as an LG. It's a human business. Maybe they didn't ask her to be considered, even if she wants to, and maybe she doesn't want to and didn't ask. You know what I mean? So who knows what's going on there, right? If I had run for governor and I have tens of millions of dollars in the bank. Do I want to be the guy who wound up running for governor as number 2? I don't know. Right? We all have egos and pride, so who knows?
Yeah. Well, we've been speaking with Chapin Fay. He is the founder of Lighthouse Public Affairs. He's our go-to GOP consultant and a gambling tout in the making. Chapin, thank you so much for weighing in our political odds. I really appreciate it.
Anytime. Thanks, David.